Downlow pastors in the pulpit. What is going on with the downlow pastors preaching in the pulpit in black churches in America today and in churches in general? Okay, this is a very interesting, often controversial topic, but it's a serious issue that needs to be addressed. Um, there are some pastors that have been living this down low lifestyle, and they're married, they have kids, they have a wife, they're the pastor, the overall pastor of the church, and all the congregation members are getting wisdom, guidance, sermons from the pastor that's leading the flock. And but behind the scenes, they're living this undercover, down low lifestyle. Um, and this is something that's actually prevalent, more prevalent in some communities than others. And the secrecy behind this down low lifestyle is society frowns upon it, and it's not accepted, like within society, to particularly for men, for men specifically. But there's definitely some men, some brothers, some men that have been living like this down low lifestyle behind the scenes, behind doors when no one is looking, when no one is seeing and or visualizing exactly what is going on. So this is a topic that can cause some type of controversy, but it's something that I wanted to address and something that I wanted to talk about, and I think it's a serious issue that should be discussed. In today's society, oftentimes when you walk into your traditional churches, you'll see a pastor preaching. There will be a choir singing. There will be ushers that are ushering people. There will be deacons that are announcing. There will be the ushers that are taking tithes and that are basically passing out flyers, passing out envelopes, and then the pastor is giving his sermon. And then you'll usually have someone that does the prayers, maybe either one of the deacons or it might be maybe a member of the choir that will do the prayers. And then sometimes they do like the, in addition to the prayers, then they do the Holy Communion as well. And this is what you would see in your traditional churches. But this is the things that happen before in front of everyone. This is like what's visible to the naked eye or what's visible to the congregation members. This lifestyle of purity and goodness and this holy, righteous lifestyle is what is evident and what people are seeing. But behind the scenes, there seems to be some people that are living this down low lifestyle, and it's in a secret, it's not in the open. They don't want people to know about it because it's frowned upon and it's not accepted in mainstream society to live this down low lifestyle. Just describing, I would say, like a scene you would see like in a typical church. There are some pastors that will actually share some of this information with you. There are books that have been written about this, TV shows, TV dramas. And in the words of one pastor that told his personal narrative and his personal story, he is quoted as stating, "I spotted this brother from my pew 10 rows back," he writes. "When our eyes locked, I knew. He looked at me just a little too long." And this scene is not something that's often, it's something that occurs often. I mean, it's not something that is not prevalent or something that only happens occasionally, but this is something that can oftentimes be viewed within the pews of our churches. And so, and a lot of this contact, sometimes it can be like little small things. It's like this nonverbal communication and like just body language, just like small things. And some people pick up on it and some people don't pick up on it. So it can start anywhere from a lingering eye contact, which some men find occurs in their churches. And some of these people really are on the down low. And the down low is a word that is used to describe um, it's a word that's used to describe black men who secretly have sex with other men while leading publicly straight lives. So they give off this impression to the public that they're straight, they're married, they have kids, but behind the scenes they are on the down low. And so this is a topic that has been addressed, and it's been addressed actually by some famous talk show hosts as well. And there are people, some of these pastors have actually come out and shared some of their stories with other people. And so basically, the whole point of this is to blow the lid off of the secret and to come out of hiding and to come out of secret and to expose this whole down low lifestyle. So what was once a secret is no longer a secret and it's now out in the open. And so the topic of black men who sleep with men but identify as straight is basically an issue, I would say, that has been heavily discussed, I would say, in American media outlets and as well as in American culture. And I would say that overall society's overall attention span and or interest in this particular topic, I would say is probably intensified, um, particularly with journalists that are basically connecting this DL phenomenon to other like diseases and or um, diseases and sicknesses and illnesses that can be prevalent with this type of behavior, particularly in communities that are disproportionately um, filled with minorities. There's a pastor that actually went into a little bit more detail and referred to this down low lifestyle as an invisible disease that's actually plaguing Black churches. And within this whole outlet and this whole layout, basically outline a plan of healing for those Black men who want out of this whole down low lifestyle. So I would say that the combination of um, STD infections, particularly with secretive Black men in the Black church, is something that grabs the public's attention. But while many take issue with the connection between these STD viruses and the down low lifestyle, this connection between the down low lifestyle and the Black church seems more difficult to dispute, because when you analyze the data and you analyze the statistics and you see the impact it can have on the individuals that are all involved, because even though it could be one person that might be participating in this, it can have an effect on a host of people that are around them, that find out about this, that witness this, that it can have a negative impact on some people, particularly within the church. So this whole lifestyle can actually be examined, I would say, a little bit more. There are some, I would say, some well-known pastors that have commented and given their own personal viewpoint on this topic. And there's one pastor in particular who posted his comment basically on a televised interview, and he is quoted as stating, "If you ever need a boyfriend, you could come to a Colgate convention and leave with two or three, and best some of the best physical intercourse you've ever had." And this is basically him stating from his own personal experiences that he experienced in his life. And so a lot of these experiences, I would say, are not conventional. It's basically something that might not be involved like in mainstream society, or it may not fit society's persona of what is acceptable, because this whole down low lifestyle of men that are sleeping with men in the Black church, I would say, is more or less, I think it's now an open secret. Like it used to be a hidden secret, but I think it's being brought more to the light, and more people are looking into this whole phenomenon. And there are several reasons for why some people might frown upon and or not accept this whole lifestyle. As it is stated, um oftentimes it can be quoted, from just main society's opinions that the Black church can sometimes be a social space of high constraint, which produces the necessity for this secret. Churches require Black men to be DL, down low. And so a lot of these people that are participating in these activities, they feel like they have to be secretive about it. It has to be hidden. They don't feel comfortable bringing it to the limelight. They don't feel comfortable sharing this information with their wives, with their children, with their family members. And it's just like this secret that they're sweeping under the rug. And it's just like this hidden thing that a lot of people are not even like really looking into. Okay, look at these different church cultures and the different constraints and the different constructs that you can pop into when you come into any of these sanctuaries. Okay, think about it. The way that your typical church is depicted, especially when looking at children that are within a community. So, a lot of people are going to say, are we painting a picture and or an image that is conducive to children developing mentally, emotionally, um, developing maturely, effectively, efficiently with the correct resources and time? And what is that? And the question to that question, and the answer to that question is no. So, when we paint this picture of people as being imperfect, and we paint this picture as being holy, holier than thou, and holy and righteous, I think it definitely can cloud people's perceptions, and it can cause people to basically classify people in a negative light. When you look at different profiles, you look at different apps, you look at different social media platforms, there's definitely a certain mystique, a certain covering, a certain cultural ideology, particularly within the LGBT gay communities nowadays. So, a lot of these people that are living this lifestyle, they have code words, they have different mannerisms, different ways of expressing themselves. And a lot of this language to the normal average person would not be able to pick up on these nonverbal cues, as well as this coded way of talking and this coded way of language. And a lot of these people think that automatically assume that if one of these pastors is DL or Downlow, that automatically assume that you're gonna be able to tell by how they act, by how they talk, they're gonna have like that overall like feminine stereotypical tactics that you're gonna pick up from your stereotypical feminine gay man. And this is not always the case. You won't always be able to tell by looking at them. As I've said before, certain terms such as DL, sometimes it can be used alongside the terms of masculine and straight acting, because these are some of the attributes that are desirable to many men that are hidden and or behind the scenes that are actually gay men, but they're perpetrating this whole philosophy or this whole phenomenon of being a straight and or masculine straight man, and they act straight. So when we look at it and look more into it and we dive into it, especially looking into different research that has been provided on this issue and looking at the overall wider culture, I think this whole download lifestyle, it gives us a glimpse basically at gay Black identity, particularly in certain socioeconomic societies and cultures when we look at the different languages. Now, there are some people that will be ashamed and or be feel like that they'll be humiliated, or like their ceremony and or like their preaching in our sermons, that some members would be outraged, angry, and not want to be a part of their church and or their ministry anymore. Now, I'm not one to tell people what they should do with their time, but I think a lot of these things that happen is because the reason why it's down low, it's hidden, it's secretive, it's behind the scene, is because they don't want to deal with the backlash and the outlash, and they don't want to deal with the outrage from frustrated members of the community that are disappointed, that are outraged, that are upset, that just are not happy with this whole phenomenon that seems to be going on. It can be quoted by different reverends within prominent societies of the community that to be on the DL, to be unfaithful in relationships, is basically a very human experience. And but black sexuality tends to be uh per- pejoratively presented. And this basically can emerge in different various aspects and can be analyzed from different angles. You can reinforce what's already existing as the narrative of black men as being predators, or you can analyze it from a different perspective and define the characteristics and or the attributes that led to this type of defiant behaviors to begin with. There are different assistants, particularly at different universities. And so sometimes these people that have maybe stepped outside the barriers of their particular race and or creed and married someone of a different tribe are quick to offer you a series of explanations of their individual behaviors. But, and this is from a woman, from when women do this, but when a man does the same thing, it's looked down upon and are frowned at, and then people start to refer to it as a social problem that's plaguing black communities. So the whole, if you look at the whole, I would say the overall historical events that have occurred over time, and you put everything into context and you analyze it from different angles, you'll be able to delve into some of the black cultural experiences that parallel with some of the historical events that have occurred. Now, there are some people that would actually um, quoted as stating that they would compare the download lifestyle to some of the negative effects of slavery, that being enslaved for so many years impacted them psychologically and it added to this whole download behavior. And this is something that could be argued. There are some cultural historical figures that have analyzed this issue and can be stated as stating it comes from trying to keep things secret when under high surveillance, when sort of kind of like when they were in slavery. And it can be read, but I have to keep that on the DL so I don't get lynched, he said, elaborating on a historical parallel. So when you analyze this and you look at it, basically saying that a lot of these pastors that are in these pulpits that are living this down low lifestyle that are secretive and keep it behind the scenes because they don't want to deal with this outlash or this anger from their congregation members. But then when you look at it, basically comparing it to when in the slavery days when they had to keep things secret, and they had to keep things secret and they were under high surveillance, and that's sort of kind of how these pastors felt like they really are under high surveillance because they are the pastor. Everything they say, everything they do is being watched by all their congregation members, is being scrutinized by all their congregation members, and because of fear of being lynched, they don't want to be lynched, and that's why they're exhibiting this down low behavior. And so a lot of these topics, I would say, are sensitive topics. And we as congregation members and we as members of the church and we as members of the bodies that are trying to live our life according to the Holy Bible, basically it states you that basically it can be perceived at how society perceives us as well as how we perceive ourselves and how our bodies are perceived overall in society. When you look at the different civil rights movements and the different um, accolades and the different things that Black people have done to achieve religious freedoms, so they can be able to congregate and worship um, peaceably without any type of troubles and or trials. So it's definitely, I would say, this policing of the Black body and making sure our bodies were respectable and controlled. Because this overall lifestyle of wanting to be dignified and respectable and be controlled, and this whole policing and this criticism that can often come, particularly when you're in the limelight, it can be a lot particularly to deal with. And a lot of this different factors that affect the overall family, a lot of it can be attributed to slavery and how the enslaved Black families were enslaved and how their families were torn apart. And it can be parallel to the told how the down low lifestyle can also rip families apart, and it can also cause emotional turmoil. It can wound a person's spirit. It can cause emotional distress. I mean, it can definitely cause some issues. So, when you look at the overall society's aspects of what is acceptable, within our society, homophobia is definitely nothing new. It's definitely something that's seriously an issue. When you look at the modern day statistics, 58% of whites in the US support same sex marriage, less than 40% of blacks accept it. And so I think it's definitely an issue for black churches to be addressed because within the community there are some issues of unemployment, fatherless children because of continuous incarceration of men of color, and so there's a kind of panic within the communities around issues of fatherhood and manliness. So when you look at the systems that are constructing these different men's life, and you look at these systems that include the down low as well as white culture's fixation with it, this whole down low lifestyle, I think it's definitely merged with the intersection of faith, ethnicity, sexuality, brought to you by support from different societies within the culture when you look at it. So, continuing on with this topic, there are some pastors that there are some pastors that such as the pastors that I'll be discussing now. Um, some pastors that basically initially they're married, they have children, and they spent so many years preaching against homosexuality, but in reality, we're having affairs with men down low behind the scenes and no one knew. Now, when we look at this topic and this issue, these particular pastors are basically helping us to spark a larger conversation about the overall sensitive topic of homosexuality in the Black church. This can be a very, very emotional issue. Some people can have very fiery opinions on this whole issue. Um, so, there's one pastor, one pastor that was actually sharing his story with a well known talk show host. And he is quoted as stating, he never thought his family, who openly showed hostility toward gay people, or his congregation would be accepting of his secret lifestyle. He is quoted as stating, when I hear myself say I am a gay man, I feel hurt. It makes me feel substandard. It makes me feel petrified. I feel lonely. This pastor has shared, and that the loneliness I feel, no one will love me. So these different pastors have shared their struggles, their pitfalls, the whole emotional trauma behind living this double life, as well as their battles with depressions, their thoughts of suicide, and all the other emotional trials and hurdles that they have occurred. Their stories, I've basically given an opportunity to a very sensitive topic that a lot of people aren't always wishing to share with others. So, this topic in and of itself is something that pertains particularly to ministers as well that are preaching in the altars and delivering this information. So, there's one pastor who shared his personal testimony, and he's a 30-year-old minister, and he is quoted as stating, for years, I lived blindly believing that one day God would take this feeling away. The 30-year-old Miami minister stated, quoted as stating, I thought one day if I prayed long enough, God would heal me from this ailment. But after years of praying, after years of fighting it, I realized this wasn't going away. I had to have a conversation with God. And so Evans, this pastor, basically declared that he was close to marrying a woman and that he wanted to marry a woman, but he couldn't go through with it. And he stated as saying, I didn't want to be that guy. I've seen too much of it, he said, adding that stress and depression led him to break the news to his family in Philadelphia last Thanksgiving. And he quoted, I was worried about what people were going to say and if they would still love me, he said, recalling that some of his family celebrated him coming out. So, this whole topic definitely it can be remain very touchy. This topic of homosexuality in the black church is basically a very sensitive topic that people don't always want to discuss. And it can be frowned upon, and some people are extremely intolerant of this type of behavior. So, this download lifestyle is definitely something that is of interest. It's something that people don't always want to discuss, but I think it's something that's important. Some of these pastors, when you look at them, they look good, they look clean, sophisticated, rich, they dress well, they dress nice, they have a wife, they have kids, they preach against homosexuality. They say, if you're gay, if you're homo, you're going to hell straight away. You're going to hell. But behind scenes and behind the doors, they're actually sleeping with other men in this secret lifestyle. And that's basically being a hypocrite. But these download pastors that are preaching in a pulpit could be your pastor, could be somebody else's pastor. So sometimes when you see people and they seem perfect and they seem like they got it together, they could be the ones that have the most issues. So I just wanted to give this word of advice. This topic could be something that affects you, someone in your family, your pastor, your minister, your deacons, your Sunday school teachers, um, your Bible study teachers, your prayer partners, your team groups, your other Christian and religious groups. So I just wanted to discuss this topic and talk about it. If you have had a similar experience, if you are struggling with this issue yourself, if you know someone that's struggling with this issue, feel free to comment below, subscribe, and share.